2 sweatshirts today.
2 sweatshirts. What do you mean?
I've got
Oh, you got a crew neck on
this thing.
That's the move.
Is it the move though? Tim has COVID.
Tim.
My brother-in-law Tim.
Oh, nice. Good job, Tim.
Yeah, him and Sydney got tested, but then the test came back. They got a saliva test or whatever, because you can do it through saliva now.
Why would you ever do the nose test then? Is it more accurate through the nose?
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of, I did just swallow my coffee wrong. It wasn't. Yeah.
Get out.
Sneezed in Walmart and 2 people freaked out on me.
Actually?
Yeah.
Like they said something
I was wearing
to
a
you?
mask. One person, I ended up seeing them later. I think they were together, but they were separate in the chip aisle. They needed 2 carts. No, sorry. I was just gonna be kind of mean, but I was gonna say, like, you're mad at me sneezing in my mask when you're here, like 2 carts full of groceries. Like, okay, maybe you need to worry about your health some other ways. But regardless, there's some truth to that. But pushing their cart, and I was walking behind them. I'm wearing a mask, and just the lady in front of me just goes, "Oh my word!" And I was like, I just was like, okay. And then she wasn't like right in front of me, but like, you know, close. Then the other lady comes walking by and just glares at me, and I'm like,
they were together, the 2 of them.
that's what I'm saying. Like together. Later on, I see them walking side by side with their carts. Like maybe they joined together in that moment, or they were together the whole time. But I was like really mad because I'm like, I'm wearing a mask. Like, I'm the one that has to deal with what just happened inside of here because it's not good. It's sticking to my nose now. It was disgusting.
It's glued on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really funny. That was something that I was always so confused about. When I worked at Walmart and I was in the online grocery thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I delivered groceries to people. I was like, I don't see how this is any more, like, preventive of disease than just going in and shopping yourself, because I'm touching everything. Single one of your groceries.
Yep.
And I'm rubbing your car with my hands. And
you just rub people's cars.
Yep.
As they're driving. Goodbye.
Thanks for coming. I'm like contaminating every single one of your groceries every time I load it in. So I just thought it was kind of funny. I don't know. I mean, I guess, you know, you're not really interacting that much with people, but I still have to make you roll down your window too and like read off all these things to you. I don't know.
It just doesn't make sense to me too. Like when you go to a place and they have a plastic over the pin pad, and it's like, don't we all touch
the
plastic
on the pin pad?
Is it just that it's easier to clean?
Maybe.
So you don't have to get in the grooves of the buttons and
There's
stuff?
I
don't know. There's just so many question marks on things that... Like, I'm all for preventing diseases and so on and so forth.
I'm just also all for things that make sense and are practical and have a direct correlation to what we're trying to do.
Yes. Which, did you see... Not that... This isn't the COVID episode, but CDC and the WHO, the World Health Organization, both came out recently. I think it was recent, or just now, maybe... They're saying it that there shouldn't be lockdowns.
I think I heard something
that there shouldn't be shutdowns because they're starting to see the starvation and the all depression, suicide stuff skyrocket. And they're like, "This isn't good. This isn't good. You need to not do it." And then here we are in Wisconsin, and we're not supposed to get together for Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
as suggested by our governor. It's just kind of like you should
like
video call instead. I don't know. I didn't watch or listen to his whole thing, but a couple people were talking about it last night. He said, if somebody invites you over, just offer to video call instead. And, like, whatever, but it's, I don't know.
Nah.
Sydney and Tim are supposed to be coming for Thanksgiving, so Tim's going to be it's going to be a COVID party. No, I'm just kidding. Hopefully by then he'll be all right and everything will be fine. It's a couple weeks away. He should be able to motor through these symptoms. He's a young, healthy man.
Young, strapping buck.
Strapping. He is strapping. Very strapping young man.
Very strapping. I just realized you have a Christmas ornament thing just hanging.
Naomi put that there. Because I wanted to put that on my tree at home, and I think she was like, well, it doesn't really go. It doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. Well, and it was also here, so she hung it up, but that's from my grandma from Canada.
Okay.
She sent each one of us kids an ornament. Makes sense. Yeah, so.
Sentimental.
Yep, it is very sentimental.
All right.
But I don't know why the flip it's there. Naomi does stuff like that all the time. Dude, that's like that stupid cat
Yeah, that creepy little cat.
Oh, dude, when she first put that up in the house, people aren't going to know what I'm talking about. But Naomi put up this creepy looking little pin cat brooch type deal, and it's a scary looking cat. And she hung it on the wall once, and it's right outside the bathroom door. And I opened the bathroom door once and came out, and I had to go immediately back in. No, but but we were talking about a specific topic today. We do have one.
Yeah.
I didn't prepare. I don't know if I need to.
That's fine. We don't ever prepare. Just kidding. We do a little
There was one that I definitely prepared for. The theocracies. No, not theocracies. Theodicies. Theocracy is something totally different.
Yeah. But we just wanted to talk about cancel culture today.
Cancel culture.
Yeah.
That just reminded me of a funny story. I keep going off. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
This guy grew up in the backwoods of Louisiana, and he knew a kid that thought he consumed his twin in the womb.
What?
You know how that's happened before?
It has?
Yeah.
Oh.
So like. Okay. They thought the twin never escaped from inside of him. So he literally, when he would talk to you. How's your day? How's your day going? How's your day going?
What?
And he would say the second one is the twin talking. But legit, like he thought that was he would repeat.
That's like
things he said.
That's probably a diagnosed mental health problem.
Sorry, the way I whispered made me think of that. Anyway,
that's scary.
Moving on.
I don't like that.
Cancel culture. We should cancel it.
Cancel it. Wait, cancel culture?
But then are we doing exactly what we don't want to be doing?
I don't know.
I don't know either. That's why we're going to talk about it. Now, yesterday when you were talking about it, you had a really interesting perspective on how we were going to go about it. Because cancel culture, I feel like you could go many different routes in talking about it.
Yeah.
You could just talk about how stupid it is. But that you could also talk about how we are probably should cancel certain things.
Yeah.
But there was an interesting way that you were talking about it yesterday that was, I think, way more relevant to what we want to talk about. A more constructive. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking to what extent are we supposed to extend this same grace that God shows to us? But also on the other side, to what extent are we called to hold people responsible for their actions? And I don't know. I believe God has placed specific authorities in our life in action to issue a punishment or to hold people accountable for their actions.
Yeah.
Yes, God ultimately is the judge, but I think there's still things that he's put in place to kind of hold people in line and to hold people accountable for their actions. But then also, we know that God has grace for those who fall, and that he has infinite forgiveness for those who would at least be repentive and ask him for forgiveness. And so, I don't know. It's kind of like the idea of don't point out the speck in someone else's eye when you have a plank in your own eye.
Yeah.
What right do we really have to cancel people?
Right. That's where, yeah, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I think you touched on something that's super important, and I think I talked about it in the last podcast a little bit, was that scripture verse in Romans 13:4. Or is it 4:13, 13:4, something like that, where it says he does not bear the sword in vain, and what he does against the evildoer carries out punishment against the evildoer, however it's worded. That's for people in authority. That's for people that are placed in authority over you, and if those are the people holding you accountable for what you're doing, then so be it. But in the same token, I know this from my own life, is that, man, if you withhold grace from people, that's an issue. Like, because I was very much so that way when I was an authoritarian to an extent when I first started in ministry with students and expecting them to be respectful, which is just a losing that's a losing battle.
Yeah.
But like, I went through a lot of that, but what ended up changing me wasn't canceling me. It was all of a sudden God just started to show me grace in other situations. Like when I would stumble, when I would trip, when I would fall, all of a sudden grace, and I'm like, whoa. And then during those moments, God got a hold of me and was like, see, the same grace that I show you, you need to show others.
Yeah.
And that's where I started to change. I'm not perfect. I still have moments where people would probably call me authoritarian or whatever. But I think that I've definitely gotten way better at handling certain situations, but it was stemmed from grace. So for me, I feel like cancel culture is the wrong way.
Yeah. I think cancel culture is just
to handle it. I don't know why I said that so delayed.
Yeah, no, I think we can still try to accomplish what cancel culture is trying to accomplish in some way, but through a much more gracious and forgiving route. Because cancel culture
is trying to get the same thing?
Maybe it's not, but
because I feel like it's almost evil. Yeah, it's like, ooh, we want to cancel you so you suffer for all your.
Yeah, it's almost absent of
grace
completely. So maybe it's not trying to accomplish the same thing. But I guess what I'm saying is, there needs to be some response from us to probably help. If somebody is like just did something terrible or in sin or something, I think we do have some sort of responsibility to respond to that, but I don't think the response is, oh, let's expose you and drive you to the ground,
right,
and take you off the face of the planet.
The Sunday sermon that talked about how, like, exposing sin, and didn't he reference a verse where it talked about, like, don't be that person that wants to, like, just expose things? Wasn't that? Oh man, no.
Honestly, I didn't hear most of the sermon. Because I was helping in kids' church.
Yeah.
But
I agree that we do have to have some response, but only if we're in the place to respond. Because, for instance, hear me out. Let me finish typing this really quick. Let me wait. I might have found. No, it does. I mean, Ephesians 5:11 have nothing to do with fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. So I guess that's not. There was some verse that he referenced that talked about how, like, don't necessarily. Man, I wish I would have wrote it down. But I'm not saying you should hide things, and I don't think that was the context of it, but it's a verse that just talks about people that want to find out the sin and then just expose it and blow it up for, like, evil reasons. I could be wrong on the verse or the reference or so on, but I believe that is a little bit of what was talked about in the Sunday sermon. It's not saying don't expose darkness, but it was just saying, like, there's a way you go about it. There needs to be a reason for it. If your reason is just, ooh, let's expose it because the drama and and I want to tear this person down, then that's not right. But if it's genuinely like, I want this person to come to know God, or I want this person to see their wrong way so they can turn to God. But that was what I was going to go down. But to reference what you were saying on, like, our response to it, Carl Lentz. Not saying pastor anymore because he was fired.
Right.
Because of a moral issue.
Yeah.
Don't need to get into specifics, even though he said what it was. Like, he didn't have to do that. I'm sure somebody would have leaked it, but he didn't have to come up. But he did. He came out and said what it was about. It seems that he's repentant of his thing, like what's going on, his situation. for me then to go on and try to DM him or comment on his stuff or do this and just be like, you son of a gun, I looked up to you, you're so trash, you're terrible, blah, 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 cancel. No, that's not my place, one, to even go talk to him.
Yeah.
Because I don't know him, he doesn't know me, so on and so forth. I'm not an authority over his life. But there still is a response from me internally that will set precedents for any situations to come. Mm-hmm. And my response in that situation needs to be grace, prayer, and you know what? I'd love to see him be a pastor again someday. Right. Because, and I think he could be. I'm not the person to cancel. Because you know what? Who knows? Lord forbid it. Lord help me to not. If I was to ever have a moral failing in my time in ministry, one, I would be very repentant of it. Yeah. I would hope anyway. I don't know who I'll be then, but hopefully I will be. Be repentant of it, and that people would show me grace. Because it's that grace that changes things, changes lives, right. Changes hearts. So, yeah. But there is an authority role that you have to carry out, much like probably Houston. What's his name? Carl's boss, basically. Oh. What's his first name? I don't even remember. I forget his name. Yeah. Brian. No.
I think it is.
Is it Brian Houston?
Brian Houston.
Leader of whatever, Hillsong. Not whatever, sorry. Sacrilegious. No, I'm just kidding. But no. He probably had an authority role in that and probably had to call him out. He's the one that had to fire him. He's the one that had to, yes, bring down an action. But I would venture to guess that he did it in grace.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yes.
I would hope even in that conversation he said, our hope is that one day you can return to ministry. But right now, these are the steps we have to take.
Correct.
But it doesn't mean that there's not room for there to be healing and restoration.
Right.
And that ultimately that has to be the goal. Like when we do respond, that needs to be the goal behind whatever action we're taking. Yeah. Is healing and restoration or redemption.
Yeah.
If our only end goal in mind is just total canceling and just destroying someone, then don't do anything.
You know who came to destroy, right?
Yeah, Satan.
Yeah, that's what you look like.
Stealing. I mean, honestly though, and stealing people's hope and saying, you know what, you don't matter anymore. You're done. This is the end of your road. Sorry, buddy.
I'm sorry, but that's not for you. Match. That's not for you to decide. The Lord and I are working this out. Yes, there are mistakes we make, but so on. And before somebody says like, well, pastors are held to a higher standard and blah, blah, about the Carl Lentz thing. Yeah. Side note, know your context and shut up. Every time. That drives me nuts when people want to say, well, pastors are held to a higher standard. Yes, correct, because they are responsible for a following and people in their congregation and so on. Now, if they lead the congregation astray, they are held to a higher standard, and God is the one judging that situation. Right. It is not saying you judge the situation. It is saying God does. That is the higher standard that they're called to. But it doesn't mean that some pastor needs to be more morally high ground than you.
But it also, I think even more than that, it doesn't mean that God has less grace for that person. I think that's more where people get wrong, is there's less grace or forgiveness for a pastor who fails than just regular person 100%. Who fails. You know?
There is. There's people grace. God's grace. God still shows grace on them, but people will hold you down.
Yeah.
And just beat you to a pulp.
But that's what I'm saying. That's just the wrong response.
100%. It is.
God isn't issuing more or less grace to anybody.
Dude, what the world would look like if we did just show more grace in situations. And I'm not saying you just let somebody run rampant, because there is a judgment that we are allowed and supposed to do. Yeah. And I just had a conversation like a week ago with somebody about this. I was like, if somebody hurts you in some way, shape, or form, you can forgive them, show them grace, and encourage them. But it doesn't mean you have to return to being best friends.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you need to put yourself in harm's way. We are still able to see the fruits of somebody's life and be like whether or not we want to be a part of that. And that is the kind of judgment and or discernment that we can use over somebody, but I am not casting final judgment, which is what I think cancel culture does.
Yeah.
It literally cancels you because it's like, okay, no hope, you won't change, you did this, we're done, bye.
Right.
That's literally what it seems like. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
But man, just a minute ago there was a part of cancel culture. Oh, that's what it is. Cancel culture sucks. But one of the things that sucks the most is when they pull something up from years ago.
Yeah.
Who's to say the person hasn't changed?
Right.
Hasn't grown, hasn't learned. Dude, if people judged me now off of decisions I made, I wouldn't be a pastor.
Yeah.
Because there was a time in my life where I didn't really serve the Lord. Mm-hmm. I was angry at everything, and I just wanted to do my own thing. Mm-hmm. And even when I came out of that and was trying to serve the Lord, when I was in that mess, I built so many habits and destructive qualities and things that still lingered and affected me as I started to pursue. So it takes a long time. Yeah. I'm 8 years deep in ministry. I was 1 year out of high school. Man, and I'm so let's say 12, 13 years where I was, since I really wasn't really serving the Lord. 12, 13 years ago, and I've gotten past a lot of it, but there's still certain qualities that it's like, Brock, why are you doing that? Why are you getting so angry? My anger's one of the ones that gets me. You know, it takes that long sometimes, especially for us smart people.
Yeah,
just kidding, I'm not smart. But.
Would you have made any progress without grace?
No, never,
Yeah, exactly,
never. Multiple times in my life where grace came in and showed me the way and completely changed my life or started the process. It wasn't instantaneous. But that's what I'm saying is like, man, people need to just calm their floppers.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say most people that I see just all gung-ho about canceling people and cancel culture do not know the Lord. And it probably is a result of they have never experienced God's grace.
Yeah.
Because I honestly don't think if you have truly experienced God's grace in your life, you can't. I don't know how you could bring yourself to cancel someone like that so brutally. I mean, maybe you can, but just knowing,
there's certain things that
I know myself. I know the things I've done. I know people could probably expose me for things as well.
Yeah.
But God has shown me grace, and I've also changed and healed and grown from things. And so I can't imagine taking that opportunity to heal and to grow away from someone by canceling them. You know?
No,
but it's because I've experienced grace. And so God's grace does lead you to want to extend that to
It does. People. It does, because it was like last night at youth where I was worshiping and I was getting into it, and worship was so great. And then we start singing that song, "Fling Wide You Heavenly Gates," and it's like, that's such a hype song. Like, I get hype with that one, man. But like, nobody's really getting into it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just want to worship for you, so that God enters in and affects you the way that he affects you when you enter into worship and when you chase him, and it doesn't mean you dance and flail and do all these things. I'm just saying, when you really press into God, there's something that happens there, and it's like, I just want them to feel it. And maybe some of them were, and they just don't know how to respond, but it definitely didn't seem like it was really happening. So I'm just like, I just want to worship for you. Why can't you feel it? Why can't I just not punch you, but like, you know? And it's almost that way with grace, though, where it's like, oh my word, I just want to show you grace because I've experienced it now, and I see you, and I hear what you're saying, and I know what can fix it, and I want to share it with you. But there's a misunderstanding until they get to the place where it becomes real to them. Because I always heard about grace. I grew up in the church.
Right.
I knew about grace, but it took specific moments of failure that didn't deserve anything.
Yeah.
And then someone showed me grace. someone showed me grace, and all of a sudden it was like, what in the like, you almost feel gross and slimy, but at the same time you're like, wait, I don't deserve this. What is going on? And you start to feel clean, and then you feel kind of bad, but then you're like, this is what it is. And then, you know, you don't always, but for me, it was like all of a sudden it's just weeping. It's just weeping and thanking the Lord, and then right living, trying to live right, like pursuing Him. All of a sudden it's like, this is what I need to know more about this.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, is that ultimately the point of grace is that there would be a change, a heart change. The reason God extends us grace is that we would have the opportunity to get back up and to change the way we're living, to respond with change, and for there to be an opportunity for healing. So grace opens the door for healing to happen. We don't receive grace just so we can go on sinning, like Paul says,
which is a huge problem, I think, in our culture, is that we have depended on the establishment for things that God is supposed to provide. So it's not just the legalistic point of view, but like so many people vote in order for laws to be put into place and think that is what's going to keep people from sinning. The same way that people will be like, oh, just go to the doctor and get some medication, or just go to, now there's a time and a place for real legitimate psychiatric help and medicine and so on and so forth. But I feel like so many people are like, oh, just go get it taken care of, or just go get this done, when it's like, okay, those things can help, but really what's going to bring the change is this grace, is going to be God's grace in your life and helping you through this journey of healing, restoring, renewing. That's the gospel. That's what it's about. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a time and a place for actual medical help, but I'm just saying there's so many things that people will just trust the establishment to do this for me, and then I'm done. I don't have to do anything. And it's like, no. Like, the biggest one though that always gets me is laws. People think, oh, pass laws and all of a sudden people will stop sinning. No, like the abortion, I'm against it, and any chance I get, I'll vote against it. 100%. But whether it's legalized or not, guess what? People are in the alley doing it with a coat hanger. No, I'm not saying that means we should fund it and make it so that it's possible. No, what we should be doing is trying to reach these people, because what's going to keep them from doing these things is grace, is the gospel, is God. We need to quit relying so much on this junk, and I feel like that's where cancel culture comes in, is people are just like, well, they're not changing, so we're just going to cancel them. Well, it's because maybe as the church we haven't been doing our job.
I think it's because they don't really see any other solution. Because they don't know the gospel and they don't know God's grace. And so, well, if we don't cancel them, they're not going to change. They'll keep going on their way, so we just got to take them out.
And that's the thing, is like, we're called to witness and like share the gospel with people, but then we're also called to disciple. To disciple people, which is a long, ongoing process of teaching. And it's like, through that teaching is where I think a lot of this will gain understanding. But right now, how bad do I want to say this? Right now, it seems like we're more concerned with political affiliation and screaming about politics. You ever see that meme where it's like, what is it? It's that kid that's just like freaking out, spazzing, whatever. And then there's like just the kid sitting quietly next to him or whatever. I think it's a meme like that. I don't know. But anyway, it's like, this is Christians right now. We're spazzing, freaking out over a bunch of stuff and whatever you want to say, which I'm not saying some of those things aren't legitimate, but they're freaking out over all this stuff while the world's over here just trying to figure out stuff on their own, when in reality, we're supposed to be the calm one next to them discipling. And if we were doing that, I feel like cancel culture would maybe still be a thing. But I just think that the world would start to shift the way it should.
Yeah, and I don't know, it just makes you think, sure, we can even as Christians, we can even talk about God's grace and be teaching God's grace. And like you said, you grew up, you knew about God's grace. But once you experience it from somebody else acting out and actually issuing grace unto you, right?
Yeah.
So how many believers are actually... Thanks. How many believers are actually living out grace, in action? How many believers are just saying, oh yeah, God's grace and teaching God's grace, but then still in their actions they're bringing the hammer down and not displaying it? And how many non-believers have not received grace from a believer and been like, oh, well, why do I want anything to do with that faith,
Right. Because here's the deal. Whether you show grace that person and then they take advantage of it and run off with it, you did what was right between you and the Lord. That's between them and the Lord. Yeah. But if you're not extending the grace, you're sinning. Mm-hmm. You're sinning. If you know what is right and do not do it, you are sinning. Scripture's very clear on that. Yeah. Very clear. And so there's no excuse that gets you out of that. There's no excuse. Mm-hmm. Up to the point of, well, Lord, they were going to kill me if I did it. We're called to not shrink back from death. Like, we are called to be martyrs if that's the case. So literally up until the point of almost certain death, there is no excuse to not do what is right and share grace with somebody. Mm-hmm. And that is what's so ridiculous and frustrating right now in the world we live in, is because yes, there is this legal hammer that everybody thinks they got to bring down on everybody. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was talking about earlier with Carl Lentz. It is not my place to bring down the hammer. Yeah. It is my place to be like, you know what? I hope grace be upon him, and I'm going to pray for him and move on from there. Yeah. But instead, everybody's watching the news or watching this and doing that, and bring the hammer down. Like, you know what? Some of these Christians right now are the same people in the crowd yelling, "Give us Barabbas." Mm-hmm. Yeah. Give us Barabbas. Don't show grace. Give us Barabbas. Crucify this. That's what they're like right now. They are the ones that yelled for the crucifixion. They're the ones that yelled for, which, I mean, ultimately was like God's plan, right? With the whole switching. But I'm just saying, like, the Christians in the audience or the people in the audience right now that are screaming about, bring the hammer down. They don't realize that it's like, okay, yes, but you know that there's a grace that's supposed to be shown here. Like, even though that was part of Jesus's call and what he was out living out, really in a perfect world, it would have been, you know what? No, let's figure this out differently. You know what I mean? Like, it should have been something else, but I don't know if that made sense, but
no,
we're just screaming for this hammer to be brought down on everybody. And whether it's cancel culture or freaking like, well, they shouldn't have resisted. They deserve to get shot. Yeah. Do you realize what you said? I heard a Christian say that once, like, well, I don't know, he shouldn't have done that. I guess he deserved to die. Yeah. Okay, we all
deserve to die, but
I mean, it's like, okay, I'm sure that I've said stupid things before, and I've said things that, who knows, probably in an episode of this podcast, there's probably something that I've said that is probably absolutely ridiculous. And maybe it's the plank versus the speck, like what you're talking about, which would be an interesting thing to kind of transition to. But it's just like, what are you saying? Yeah. I'm not saying somebody who goes around and shoots a bunch of people should have grace. But at the same time, shouldn't they? If they're repentant of it. So this was an interesting topic that I just had recently with somebody. Now, when we get to heaven, we're not going to have all the same feelings of like, oh, you're here? You know what I mean? But, dude, riddle me this, and everybody listening to this. You get to heaven, you see Jeffrey Dahmer. Because part of his biography and his life story is that he found Jesus when he was in prison.
Really?
Is that he came to know the Lord.
I did not know.
Before he died.
That's kind of wild.
So tell me what you're going to do. Tell me how you feel listening to that. Tell me how you feel knowing that. Somebody who I guarantee, me included, would not really want to show grace to because of what they've done and what they did. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Like that, guess what? Grace isn't like withheld from people. Is there anything, am I missing something? Is there anything in the Bible where grace is not covering?
No, I don't think there's anything outside of the bounds of God's grace. As long as we are repentant. I think.
Right. Correct.
I think we need to be willing to turn our hearts towards God to receive that grace.
Yeah.
I think we withhold grace from ourselves.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean grace is not available.
Right.
And I think grace is available to all people, and that's one of the just crazy things about God and his character that's so outside of our human thinking, is that God can show grace to someone and forgiveness to someone like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah.
Our human minds cannot
fathom.
We cannot fathom that.
The story of the missionary, that he was like a kid or whatever or something, or it was the husband, or I don't know, they went to some town and they were missionaries. Well, then they got tracked down and his family got killed in front of him. He went back to that town and witnessed, and they turned their hearts to the Lord.
Yeah.
Dude, if there's any part of me coming back to that town, it's with guns. And I'm blowing everybody's brains out.
Yeah.
Like, that's me. That's the struggle that I would have. But this guy, as a missionary, saw his whole family killed in front of him, and all of a sudden is like, no, I'm going to come here and I'm going to...
That's crazy.
I can't fathom that.
Yeah.
That is where, the people that either get hurt by somebody else and then later on they do some like TED talk together and it's like, I forgave him and he raped me or he molested me or he did this to me, and it's like, whoa, what? And they're not dead. I'd be like, here's my TED talk, here's the body of the man that like, this is what I would be doing.
Yeah.
And then I'd immediately get arrested on stage and it'd be the most viral TED talk of all time. But no, yeah. I'm kind of joking, which is kind of messed up. But graveyard humor. But that's what I'm saying is like, there is no bounds of grace. There's no bounds to grace. It's not like only trapped here, except for, like you said, if you're not repentant, then no. Yeah. But if you're actually repentant of your sins, grace goes into the situation and changes lives, which is literally the opposite is cancel culture.
There's zero part of God's character being displayed through cancel culture.
Yeah, none. Nothing. None.
Yeah.
None. I can't put my brain around that. Yeah. I can't find a way to excuse it.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say something, then it was awkward silence, then it was But with the plank and the speck, I think that's cancel culture. Because though I have sin going on in my life, I'm going to try and call you out for yours without grace.
Yeah.
But if I am coming to you in grace because I know what it's like to have grace and I have these issues and God's grace is helping transform me, I want to share that with you. It's almost like, I'm not saying this is scriptural, but if I was to take the plank out of my eye and show you, hey, God's grace is helping me with this. Let me help your speck before it becomes a plank.
Yeah.
That I think is different. That's different. Whereas, cancel culture is literally like a log in your freaking eye, and you're coming over here trying to point out somebody's freaking speck in their eye, but really it's a pop blood vessel that they can't control, and it was in the past, and it has nothing to do with who they are now, but we're going to be like, no! That's how they sound.
Amen.
Freaking word.
Yeah. Well, and just another thing to consider too is
do it.
Just like when Scripture talks about when we withhold forgiveness from someone, we also withhold forgiveness from ourselves. Like when we harbor unforgiveness in our hearts,
yeah,
God then is not going to forgive us of our sins, you know?
No. And yeah.
So you're only hurting yourself by, you know, because I think cancel culture is just unforgiveness towards someone, you know? And I think by canceling someone just without any grace like that, you're withholding forgiveness from yourself even.
When I hear somebody want to do cancel culture or cancel somebody, my immediate response, maybe not in these exact words, but if I'm in a counseling session with somebody or somebody comes to me privately and is like, I think you should do this against this person and so on, my immediate response is, what you got going on? What's going on? What's going on behind closed doors for you? What happened in the past? What happened?
What could someone cancel you for?
No, not like not necessarily. I just flipped the script on them. No. I mean, like, because I've had people try to come at me later to find out that they had severe issues going on, sin issues that they were not dealing with, and so they try to,
yeah.
And so I just like I want to help them with okay. Then all of a sudden I've had it before where finally they confess something or talk about something that is going on in their life, and then I counsel them through that, and all of a sudden they forget all about that, cancel this person and that, and all of a sudden they're living in grace and transformation and going through their life, and then all of a sudden they're like, whoa, and their whole demeanor changes, and they just all of a sudden are like, oh my goodness. And it's like what you're talking about, that forgiveness that they had against this person. Well, then they finally like let go of that, or sorry, the unforgiveness. They let go of that, and all of a sudden they started to feel forgiveness. They started to feel grace for what they've done, because it's almost like when people are sinning and doing something awful, they feel like, man, well, I'm not forgiven, and I'm being held responsible and accountable for my stuff, so I got to hold everybody else accountable, and I got to go for this, and I got to attack. And it's like, no, just focus on your own lawn before you go pooping in somebody else's.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
It is. Would you like to summarize?
Yeah. I can. I mean, ultimately, I don't believe there's any justifiable reason for canceling someone. And even when we are supposed to respond, I think we only need to respond, like we said, if you're in the position to respond. So whether you are the authority over someone, or, you know, if you have a relationship with someone, or you see someone within the church in sin or a friend in sin, I think you have a place to respond to that person. But even then, your response needs to be in grace and with the goal that healing and restoration will happen. And then I believe there can be an amazing thing that happens when we respond, or we even confront someone on their sin, right? But it has to be in a place of grace and with the hope for restoration and healing. And I think that's when change will really happen and healing will really happen, when we're displaying the character of God's grace to other people.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about canceling someone, don't. Examine your own heart. Examine the unforgiveness in your heart. And
because Jesus could cancel you.
He definitely could.
And by canceling you, I don't just mean ruining your career.
Yeah.
It'd be lights out!